In my culture growing up, emotions weren't always talked about, but they were certainly felt. They were felt in the way that my family cooked for us, in the music that we listened to, in the little pan dulce that they would give us with the cafecito. Even if we were having hard days, no questions had to be asked, but there was this sense of attunement, which I feel.
Good morning, everyone. It's literacy specialist and mom, Mohini Pollock. On the Raise Confident Kids podcast, we talk about everything from how children learn to read and write to how to make sure they are safe, connected, and ready to learn, because literacy and social emotional learning are connected. Today, I'm inviting Crystal Jacobo, licensed marriage and family therapist with over 14 years of experience. She's also a credentialed school psychologist. So, Crystal is the right person to talk to us about therapy for kids. She works with both families and kids, but specializes in working with children. So she'll be answering all of the questions you have about raising confident kids who believe that they can succeed at learning. Crystal, welcome. Can you share a little bit about yourself with us?
Hello, Mohini. Hello, everybody. Mohini, thank you so much for inviting me into this space. It's truly feels like an honor. I am Crystal, and I am a therapist, licensed therapist, and first and foremost, someone who holds this topic very closely to my heart. I'm first generation Mexican, Colombian-American, and a mom. So I truly understand how important it is to be supporting our children and really see childhood as the portal to all beings and all adults, because we all hold childhood very closely to us.
And Crystal, what inspired you to become a therapist?
Well, early in my education, I in college education, I knew I wanted to work with children. There was just something so pure about children, and I wanted to be a presence for children. I didn't know in what capacity, and took some courses in psychology, and that's when I learned so much about myself and realized that so much of my experiences early in childhood really helped me understand myself and why I was acting certain ways or responding to things a certain ways or had different perspectives. And that really just opened up the doors to my own healing, and then understanding that I want to be that type of presence for children and families. And that's what inspired me to be a therapist.
So, being a therapist is definitely a calling for you. Now, as an educator, as a literacy specialist, culture definitely informs how I approach students. I'm technically first generation. I moved from India to America when I was 5 years old. Um, my family had also traveled to a lot of countries before that. I've taught very multicultural classrooms, and I've grown up in multicultural classrooms. So for me, education and understanding culture, promoting diversity are very interconnected. You sent me a story about what culture means to you, and I thought it was really like meaningful and detailed. I would love for you to share a little bit with us about what culture means to you.
Culture is everything, just as you're saying it. We all have our own, and for me, because I'm first generation Mexican and Colombian and American, born and raised in the United States, being first generation with all of these three cultures brought so many beautiful complexities to my life, and the unique challenges of blending them in my everyday life. And so I see how family identity and resilience can really inform my work with children. And I see how cultural roots and early life experiences really influence how we show up, how we struggle or cope with our struggles, and even grow. And I see it so much in my family as well too. And so I think for me, in my culture growing up, emotions weren't always talked about, but they were certainly felt. They were felt in the way that my family cooked for us, in the music that we listened to, in the little pan dulce that they would give us, with the cafecito, and that even if we were having hard days, no questions had to be asked, but there was this sense of attunement, which I feel I bring so much into my work as a therapist, a sense of attunement, and that tenderness is one of the culture pieces, I think, for me, that has really spoken to me. And every culture has its own, and we should certainly, in therapy, we're always understanding what the family culture is and meeting them where they're at. So this work cannot be done without that piece.
Absolutely. Like often when we think about culture, we start with the food and the celebrations. And I definitely come from a family as well where food is love. So making food for someone is a way of expressing love. And it might not have been cafecito, but we definitely liked like our ginger chai. As I've grown up, I've become more of a coffee drinker, but yeah, I definitely understand that sentiment of food is love.
Mm-hmm.
Culture can also mean how willing we are, Crystal. We talked about this earlier, to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Often, this is a broad generalization, but often people of color, we do struggle to ask for help, especially when it comes to parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you've experienced? Can you tell us a little bit about how you're parenting your daughter and how it might be a little bit different from the way you were raised?
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of the way that I was raised as a first generation Mexican American
Mhm.
Colombian was that showing emotion sometimes was too much. And so
Mhm.
there's a saying in Spanish, que calladita te ves más bonita, and it's quiet. When you say quietly, you look prettier.
Oh.
It's just showing
Yeah.
emotion could be too much.
Mhm.
And so I had to undo a lot of those pieces. And I really embrace my daughter's emotions.
Mhm.
And because that's information for us to know that, hey, something is happening here. We want our children to be attuned and build a sense of self where they understand themselves and are able to navigate these emotions and not suppress them. And those are some pieces that I bring in, is that I'm open to talking about emotions, that we're not going to just say don't have them at all, that being angry is okay. Let's find a way to mold that emotion where it's adaptable, and showing that emotion is an okay thing.
Right. I think of Mexican and sometimes Mexican American men as well. There's that like idea of machismo. Is
Mhm.
that something that you think about when you work with kids from those backgrounds?
Absolutely, it can show up depending on the family that comes in, and their beliefs, and it absolutely does show up. Um, and again, it goes back to suppressing these emotions and seeing them as wrong when really they're a guide for us. Our emotions are like an inner compass of what is happening right now. What do I do with this emotion? It's sending me some sort of signal,
Mhm.
and having the parent respond to this in a way that's attuned and responsive, and not shutting these emotions down, because what ends up happening is later on it manifests in a completely different way, where it's not going to be helpful for that child who's now an adult or anybody around them.
So we need to raise our girls and our boys to understand their emotions so that um, they can work with them and not against them. We don't want our boys to be stifling their emotions, right? That's
Absolutely.
something I think a lot about because I'm a boy mom. And, you know, even though I'm on board with everything you just said, um, there are some things that we're exposed to from an early age, like men are strong, be your man. And it's hard to unlearn all of that, something that I have to think about often. Like, why did I use those words when I was talking to my son? Or maybe we need to read some more of these books because of what he's being exposed to.
Mhm.
Anyways, Crystal, there are so many things I could talk to you about, but we are here to talk about therapy for children. So, if I'm a parent and I'm have a child with a learning difficulty, I'm noticing that they don't have a very strong learning mindset. They think that learning, maybe reading or writing, are not for them. Maybe they've been assessed with a learning difficulty. I might consider therapy. Now, first off, um, what qualifications should I look for when I'm searching for a therapist for my child?
Mhm. So to answer your question for qualifications, a therapist would be someone who is licensed as a mental health therapist. So that could be a licensed marriage and family
Mhm.
therapist, licensed social workers. There's licensed professional clinical counselors. There's clinical psychologists. All of these different licenses uh, prepare someone to be able to provide clinical therapy.
Mhm.
What a parent really wants to look for if they're looking for someone for their child is someone who is a child therapist, someone who understands children, who understands child development, who understands attachment, who understands play, who understands if there's a learning difficulty, um, some of those neurodiversity pieces as well. Because the whole point of therapy isn't to fix a child. We're not here to solve or fix anything. They get so much of that already
Mhm.
in school and in other places. That therapy is supposed to be a place where they're able to come in and unwind and be authentic and be
Mhm.
themselves, not the therapist trying to fix them, but help them and support them in understanding and strengthening their sense of self in a positive way.
So you should ask your child's potential therapist what they specialize in as you interview them or as you assess whether they're the right fit for your family. Crystal, you and I talked a little bit about a play-based therapy approach. That is a very current, modern, research-based approach to supporting kids. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a play-based therapy approach is, what it might look like from the outside?
Mhm. So play is a language for children, and play therapy is something that's very specific in the niche of a licensed therapist.
Mhm.
There's actually a credential to go get
Okay.
if you want to be
Mhm.
a credentialed play therapist. It's not absolutely needed, but if you want someone who really specializes in doing this work with children, and it's been around actually for a good while. I think it's more known now these days, but it's nationally recognized. So this is an evidence-based approach, and play is the language of our children. It's how children express themselves, and it's their natural way of language from early on in life. And so this mode helps children work through their struggles, express their emotions, and builds an understanding of their entire world. And so, someone who's a play therapist and uses play will understand that there's an objective behind every single thing that's being done in the room, in the playroom is what we would call it.
Absolutely.
And a therapist really who understands this will know and how to tap into that language so that way the child feels seen and understood. So on the outside, it might look like it's just play, but
Like, what are they really doing in there? Yeah.
yeah, it can really look like that, but there's an objective behind everything that's happening. And that can be done through a dollhouse, through a sand tray,
Hmm.
are through Legos, through movements, through so many different things. Uh, so
Yeah.
that's typically what it would look like.
I want to emphasize that the Legos, the dollhouse, the sand tray are all tools that are
Mhm.
being used by a professional. Like Crystal said, there's specific objectives that she has that she's trying to achieve, and she's using these toys as tools. I think as a literacy specialist, I do the same with my younger students. Like we'll learn letters and sounds and words by, playing hopscotch with sidewalk chalk or by building something with our hands. And from the outside, it might just look like, well, this is what my child does anyways after school. But what matters in these situations is who the professional is and what they're using the tools to achieve. Um, Also, as you were speaking, I was thinking about how my toddler, who's almost 3, if when he comes home, if we sit at the table for snack time and I ask him, how was school? What did you do with your friends? And maybe like 2 other questions, he may or may not answer. But as we're playing together, if I ask him the same things, he will answer or he'll just bring it up without having to be asked. So, as a parent, you've probably noticed that, and the therapist is taking that to another level based on their skill set and based on how they know to reach your kid. A play-based approach is really powerful.
Absolutely.
Now, what is the point of therapy? Big
Well,
question. Yeah,
it's a very loaded question. The point of therapy, well, every family is going to come in with a different need.
right.
And, and again, as I mentioned, whatever that need is, we're not here to fix. The therapist is not there to fix a child, and so it's very important for families to understand, we don't have a magic wand, and if we did, we'd be
Right.
handing them out. But we do want to support the child in being able to understand themselves
Mhm.
and for the child to be able to feel safe enough to be seen and build a relationship so that way healing and growth can happen. Without a relationship, it's the child won't be able to show up as their authentic self. And so it's really important for us um, to build a relationship and to support them in understanding their feelings. And therapy isn't about doing more. So the parents don't need to do something more specifically. Actually, it's about slowing down and getting curious and finding a way to respond to their child so that way meaningful growth can happen. So it's not about doing all these extra things. It's we're slowing down to understand. And a lot of times families also benefit from these pieces because indirectly it's supporting the families and understanding, oh, well, that makes sense. You know what? I might experience that too because we all have childhoods.
We live in a culture where things move very quickly, and if a child is having some kind of emotional regulation problem or, is struggling with a learning mindset, it's tempting to just add to cart whatever program or solution says that they will provide immediate results. But as you and I know, when it comes to kids, to make an impact, you require relationship, routine, and it takes a long time. It takes practice, it takes repetition to genuinely impact a child in a way that's going to have a ripple effect on their whole life. And you can do that through therapy. I can do that through helping kids develop a learning mindset towards reading and writing. So, what I think a lot of parents and caregivers will probably wonder, how long is this going to take? Um, what is your process and how long do most children spend in therapy?
And so a child comes in, we do a very thorough uh, questionnaire. It's called the clinical assessment, where we're asking so much information from when the child was in the mom's belly, all the prenatal
Mhm.
care, all the way to what's happening now.
Really? Ooh,
Mhm.
okay.
All of those pieces
Yeah,
matter.
yeah.
All of those pieces matter.
Wow.
Yeah, and so all of these pieces really mold what the treatment plan is going to look like. But typically, I would say children can be in therapy for a year or longer, and just like adults, go and come, leave and come back. The therapeutic relationship when as needed, but it's a process, and it really depends on the family because we're shifting the family from whatever's happening from surviving to intentionally responding. So that's why all of these questions and understanding really helps us not label what's wrong, but understand what the child needs.
My advice for families would be do your homework when you're choosing the therapist for your child. If you are going to be working with someone who has a private practice or is maybe part of a group practice, take your time making sure that that person, can relate to your child and their lived experiences, their cultural experiences, because once therapy starts, you're going to have to trust. Like Crystal mentioned, there's a period of time that it's going to take for her to develop or for a therapist to develop a relationship with your child. Because this person is seeking to create a genuine one on one relationship with your child. And as you know, that takes time. Um, and Crystal mentioned that, like, for every child, the timeline will be different, the plan will be different, but budget for a year. What you don't want is to after 2 weeks to be looking for a big win or an outcome. As we've talked about, like it takes time with kids. So do your homework at the very beginning, budget, and work out with your therapist what a likely timeline will look like for your family, especially
Mhm.
if this is something that you're doing out of pocket. Now, Crystal, I have a few scenarios for you. We have families of children with learning difficulties who listen to this podcast, and they might be wanting more specifics. So I'm going to present you with three different children, and I would love for you to tell me how you might respond to them. First, we have a girl named Yasmin. She has developed a fixed mindset towards reading and writing. She's in second grade. She often says, I can't do it, or I don't know, when she's asked to read and write. She was recently assessed with dyslexia. Families, educators, as we know, often like assessments for learning difficulties will happen after first grade. So she shuts down when anyone tries to support her with reading and writing at this point. How can therapy help her?
Mhm. Jasmine reminds me of so many kids I've supported, bright, creative, and full of potential,
Mhm.
but who have also internalized the struggle as failure. So the words when Jasmine or when children say, I can't do it, it's really rarely about the skill itself, but it's often about fear, or it can be shame,
Mhm.
or feeling unsafe to just even try. So in therapy, what we can do is create a safe space where the focus isn't just on reading or writing. It can be on understanding the emotional impact of that struggle. So we work to name and gently shift that mindset from um, the emotional struggle of the impact, but building emotional safety through compassion and celebrating small wins. Um, so then we'd also work with the adults and help the adults in understanding, that what she's saying is about her nervous system not feeling safe to try, or the sense of shame, and this is why she shuts down. So helping the family or the parents to regulate with her, so that way she can work through that frustration as well, outside of the therapy room. So then it starts to shift from I can't do this, but it can shift to I can try even if it's hard.
Yeah, I think something really important that you just brought up is that you share and connect with parents as you're working with kids. So, families, as you're looking for the right therapist for your child, I personally think it's important to look for someone who will be communicating with you and connecting with you throughout the process. Now, I am going to present you with one more scenario. Let's say Carlos is in kindergarten. He speaks Spanish at home with his family and is embarrassed that his English speaking, reading, and writing isn't as good as his peers. His peers seem to have learned a lot of skills like letter sound relationships already in preschool or at home. It's the first time he's being exposed to these. He is off task often and quickly becoming the class clown. How can therapy support him in developing confidence at school?
Carlos carries the experience of being bilingual and feeling behind and embarrassed is what I hear. So something many first or second generation children quietly hold this. And I think this hits home a bit.
Mhm.
And so I think in therapy, what we would do is explore what it feels like to not see yourself reflected or understood in the classroom community or community, so that way we can help Carlos build a sense of confidence and belonging and pride in himself. And that class clown behavior is often a mask to hide the embarrassment, and to redirect some of that attention that he might be feeling from feeling out of place. So in therapy, we would again be working with Carlos to help build that confidence and that pride and belonging, of his home language and culture, and supporting him and understanding that learning takes time, and that it's okay to be exactly where he is, and that actually knowing two languages is such a superpower. It's such a cool thing, and it's just building that confidence and helping his adults in his life see that humor not as a behavior problem, but as something that we want him to stay connected to, and for us to find a way to give him the right connection, and not correcting that, but embracing that as well.
Yeah, and I think that starting when you notice the problem is also important. Like with academic skills, we'll notice notice the situation and usually wait till second grade for true intervention, but those 2 or 3 years of a child feeling down on themselves, feeling like they're not smart enough can really impact them. So, Crystal, like how early can kids start therapy?
Yeah, Mohini, as soon as possible. I've seen infants. I've seen infants, because if we go back to the attachment piece, there's this synchrony that's happening between the parent and the child this entire time. And so if there is an infant that could be showing signs of emotional dysregulation, because the mom isn't, or the parent, the caregiver isn't fully present. So I've seen it as early as infants, and just as you're saying, as soon as we notice that there's a some sort of sign of emotional dysregulation or disruption in the significant caregiver and the child, we want to intervene, because that relationship is the core of our upbringing, of our being as adults as we get older.
Yeah. I have learned so much in this conversation about how therapy works for children, who it's right for, and how to find the right therapist for my child if that is something that I decide to do in the future. I hope this has been really, really helpful for the families who've listened to our conversation. Crystal, where can people find you?
Right now, I'm on Instagram, Therapy by Crystal. I will eventually be launching a website there, and that would be the best way to find me. I'm so grateful for this conversation, and thank you so much, Mohini, for having me.
For sure. And do you work with families only in person at the moment?
Right now, only in person. I do take telehealth sometimes. For children, in person is really the biggest gift for our children.
Thank you for your time, Crystal.
Okay, thank you.